So I recently got an Instagram DM that I found interesting, and I feel like a lot of people would have this same question. So it reads, I watched your video where you compare the research tools, but what about search volume? So the video that they're talking about is this one where I take some of my listings, I show you the number of sales I've made for those listings, and I search for them and I find them on the most popular Etsy research tools to see how accurately they estimated the sales numbers compared to the actual sales that only I can see on the back end of my account. Because whenever you use these tools and you see the number of sales, that's not the real number of sales. All these tools just estimate that number using an algorithm. There was one that I thought stood out from the others, so I do reveal which one I thought that was. I will link that video in the description. But that was comparing product research tools. So I did not include tools like Sales Samurai and Marmalade because those are primarily keyword research tools. But anyway, back to the question. So Everbee and eRank consistently show me similar numbers. Allura is unrealistically high. Sales Samurai, different worlds. I believe this would be crucial information for basic research to ensure not to waste countless hours on research and product creation due to inaccurate data from the research tool. And then here they've got this photo. Basically, if they search for the keyword affirmation card, Everbee shows these numbers and Sales Samurai shows these numbers for monthly search volume. Obviously, very different results between the two tools. So at first I replied explaining that essentially to me it doesn't matter. You can pause to read what I wrote if you want to. I just didn't think much of it. But then I was like, hold on a second. Like, these results are so different. I mean, Everbee and Sales Samurai are out by a factor of 1,000. And obviously these are algorithm generated estimates, but that's still a pretty big error margin and they can't both be correct. So maybe if I compared the results between the keyword tools, we might be able to find out if there are any outliers. So that's what I did. And to be honest, I got some very interesting results. But first of all, for all practical relevance, let me just explain my original answer to this question. So basically, I said, to me, it's two things that you're looking for, right? It's the fact that these tools can give you a list of in-demand keywords in the first place without you having to come up with random keywords, and their ranking that matters rather than the concrete numbers, because you don't need to know exactly how many people search for a keyword, right? At the end of the day, what I care about is getting traffic and making money, not whether 1,400 people or 19,000 people are searching for the keyword affirmation cards, right? It just doesn't affect my life. I've used this keyword research method for like the past 2 years, mostly using Sales Samurai as my main keyword tool. Even though I do have the paid versions of most of the popular tools, Sales Samurai is the one I prefer because of the unique Chrome extension and the one that like gives you like 500 keywords at once, and I make money. So if it works, I'm going to keep doing it, right? That's what's practically relevant to me at the end of the day. But essentially, the information that I need from these tools, so what I'm paying for, is two things. Firstly, to get a list of keywords that are in demand, as I just said, because otherwise, how am I going to come up with all these keywords, like, off of the top of my head? Obviously not. And if I looked for them on best-selling listings on Etsy, one by one, that would take me ages. So these tools save me a lot of time. And secondly, the order of ranking compared to other keywords, which these keyword tools seem to generally agree on. At least, that's what I thought when I wrote this reply. Now, what I mean by ranking is if we look here at this at this photo, let's look at Everbee first. So the orange numbers. So affirmation cards, this keyword, has much more searches than the keyword affirmation cards for kids, according to Everbee. Now, Sales Samurai also agrees that they have more searches, so that makes sense, right? They agree. Now, if you look at affirmation cards printable, that also has more searches than the keyword affirmation cards digital, right? And Sales Samurai agrees, right? So if these two keywords had the same amount of competition, and I was like down to my last keyword, my 13th spot, then I would know that affirmation cards printable would probably be the better keyword to use. Now, if you're paying attention, you might have spotted that there's a small inconsistency between affirmation cards for kids and affirmation cards digital, right? So these rankings don't match up. At the time, I did not see that, which is why I said that in general the ranking is pretty consistent. Later, I did some more research and I found that this might not be the case. So I decided to make this video and document what I found. And that is what I'll be showing you. Now, you might have heard of a tool called Keyword Planner. It's this free tool by Google. They literally show you the average monthly searches for any keyword that you type in. It's used by people running Google ads and who run websites for organic traffic. Even though these are, pretty big ranges, they could be more helpful, I agree, but you can expect them to be correct because Google is showing you its own data, which obviously it has access to, right? So what I've done here is collect some keywords that would likely have high search volume on Etsy. I've labeled them A to J, and I've also assigned a color to each keyword. You'll see why I did this later. And then I searched for these keywords on Google and recorded the monthly search volume, Google Keyword Planner. And then I searched for all these keywords on the paid versions of the most popular Etsy keyword tools, including Everbee, Sales Samurai, which are the Chrome extensions, and then also Marmalade, Allura, and eRank, which are the tools in themselves. So then I recorded the results in the table, and I was doing this to find out three things. Firstly, we already know that these tools are going to get different results from each other because they use different algorithms, but does the ranking of the keywords line up? So that's one of the things we're using them for, right? To compare keywords so we can decide which one to use in a limited number of spaces in our title and tags. Secondly, when it comes to concrete accuracy, are the results actually realistic according to comparisons with Google search results? Remember, just because something is searched less on Google doesn't mean that it should also be searched less on Etsy, because Etsy has a different demographic. It's mostly people from the USA, mostly women. So also don't expect the results to be proportionate because Etsy is an e-commerce website. So keywords relating to products are obviously going to be proportionally more frequently searched than on Google, right? So to illustrate my point, Google has about 40 times more traffic than Amazon, but Amazon is still the number one place for shoppers to start their search. However, what I do expect is that realistically, the Etsy monthly search volume should be the same or less than the range provided by Google, because Google has about 200 times more traffic than Etsy. There may be exceptions, but realistically, I think this is a reasonable assumption, right? And thirdly, are there any green flags or red flags? This means, is there anything to suggest one tool is more accurate than the others or significantly less accurate? Does anything stand out? Now, before I show you the results and talk about my thoughts and conclusions, I want to say a few things. So, and these are important. So just remember that these are all very approximate figures, and none of us, including me, actually know the real numbers unless you work at Etsy. So I wouldn't draw any conclusions from this data. It's just me showing you what I found, or even worse, accusing anybody of anything, if you get what I mean. That's definitely not what I'm trying to achieve here. I know some people might feel a certain type of way because people are paying for these tools and they put a lot of trust in them. I understand that, but just use it as an indication and listen to what I have to say at the end of the video. Also, this is only a sample of 10 keywords because I didn't want to spend hours doing this, and if we repeated this with more keywords, we could get different results, so just bear that in mind. So here we go. Take a moment to look. I can guess what you're all thinking, but let's go through this systematically. Now, point number one, do the keyword rankings align? That means, if Everbee says a keyword has less searches than another keyword, then does Sales Samurai agree? Does Marmalade and Allura agree with that, right? So this means, if yes, then this means whichever tool we use, we can rely on it to compare keywords. Now, at first glance, it seems like roughly maybe the lowest search keyword on Google generally has low search volume according to tools, with a few exceptions, and the ones with higher search volume generally seem to have more search volume, but with a few exceptions according to the tools, right? However, this is where the color coding comes in. What I've done here is color code each of the keywords and their place in the ranking according to each tool. Now, if all the tools were accurate, then you should see that they agree with each other, even if they're out by like a factor of 10 or 100, right? So if they were all accurate, you should see a row of green, a row of blue, a row of purple, right? Now looking here, we can see, so these four seem to agree that A has the lowest search volume, except for Everbee, and B and C are also on the low side. There's some weaker agreement that I has the higher search volume, but then that's pretty much all I can say. For the rest of the keywords, looking at this, I cannot confidently say that they agree at all based on what is in front of me, right? Now, secondly, are they realistic according to Google search volume if we compare? Now, I would say for Everbee, Marmalade and eRank, yes. For Sales Samurai and Allura, no. They seem to be out by a factor of 100 at least, right? And lastly, any green or red flags. Well, I certainly don't see any green flags to suggest that one tool is more accurate than the other. Again, I don't have the true numbers, but there's nothing in the numbers, from the numbers that I can see, that suggests that, right? But there are definitely some red flags. Firstly, Allura seems to be producing some insanely high numbers compared to Google, which doesn't look good. And secondly, Sales Samurai seems to cap out at 270,000. If you look at this column, whenever there's a very high number, it just says 270,000 something, which I don't know why that is, but it just seems a little fishy to me. So let's go back to the question and see how I would answer this differently in light of this new information that I've just found. So firstly, I cannot say that these tools are generally reliable in terms of concrete accuracy. After comparing to Google and to each other, as you've just seen me do in the video, to be completely honest, going forward, I would not rely on them to compare keywords or perform any calculations. Now, if you've seen some of my videos before, you might know that sometimes I use Sales Samurai to do calculations to decide which keywords I should use, given a limited time and limited resources. Now, I was not trying to deceive anybody or look smart. I was just under the impression that I was being given accurate data. But in light of these recent findings, I do accept the possibility that they may not be as accurate as I thought. And if that is the case, then I have wasted time. This is a hard thing to admit because I was very invested in this method for a long time. But again, I can't deny reality. I just have to accept the numbers. I have to accept the data that's in front of me. Now, I don't think using keyword tools is completely in vain, obviously. What still holds is that I have been able to increase my traffic and increase my revenue much more than when I didn't use these tools like Sales Samurai. But that is probably not due to the accuracy of the data and comparing keywords and competition ratios in a lot of detail, but rather the tool just being able to actually find these in-demand keywords for me in the first place, regardless of the actual numbers, because these keywords, they don't come out of nowhere. They get detected by the tool because people are actually searching for them, regardless of how many people that actually is. So what is the final verdict then? Well, I would say that if you are using one of these tools, you can keep using it to give you high demand keyword ideas, and then obviously look for the ones with lower competition to give you those high demand, low competition niches, right? But keep in mind now, more than before, that all they can tell you reliably is that the keywords are in demand. Don't take the numbers too literally.